I'd like to call the regular council meeting for the city of Twinsburg, March 12th meeting to order. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Ms. McFearin?
Here.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Here.
Mr. Scaffide?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Furey?
Here.
Mr. Bellan?
Here.
Okay. Join Mr. Barr for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Oops.
We ask for guidance and direction in all city matters before us tonight. We give thanks to be able to be together. Let us continue to strive to make our community a better place. Help us to work together, and may we give our best always. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the meetings from the February 12th, 2019 meeting. Any additions, subtractions, alterations, anything from anybody? Okay. All right. I move that we approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Shannon, call the roll, please.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Do we have any awards or presentations tonight? Mayor? Okay. Okay, next on the list is audience participation. Shannon?
First, we have Sally Gudash.
Sally Gadosh, 9250 Liberty Road, Twinsburg, Ohio. Again, I want to reiterate what I said in the caucus meeting, that I am grateful that you have changed the language in Ordinance 4, 2019 to satisfy council's need to approve all site plans prior to building permits and construction. I shared with you several incidents where that was not true. The Planning Commission was concerned that buildings were being built without their approval, without their oversight. So that was why I brought to your attention about the language in Ordinance 04. I'm also concerned, and have been concerned, about the lack of attention given to the certification and authority of our charter and zoning code. It's been an ongoing struggle for the last 18 years. Court rulings are ignored. It's a dangerous situation to allow a city to be without a zoning code certified. I believe Mr. Maestros agreed that at one time Title III and the zoning code needed to be upgraded, amended, and approved by voters. That has not happened. As a matter of fact, in 1989 code was the official base of a code was the last time we voted, officially voted. That was a proposed amendment to Shall Ordinance 87, 1989, adopting an amended zoning code, ordinances, and a map of the codified ordinance of the city of Twinsburg be approved. That was approved by 1,280 votes. The next, there was an issue on November 7th, 2007, amending Ordinance 60, various provisions of Title III of the Twinsburg Zoning and Development Regulations. Shall they be approved? The vote was no, 3-1-3-5. To the best of my ability, there is no other ordinance or ballot to approve our code. On March 7th, 2005, Judge Williams said that ballot number 61, Ordinance 68-2000, which was the UDC, was not properly passed according to the city charter. The ordinance proposed changes to the Twinsburg zoning code, subdivision regulations, and zoning map of the city of Twinsburg. This was upheld by appellate judge March 7th, 2003, when Judge Carr said, nonetheless, the city enacted the UDC, even after Judge Williams said no. In fact, she goes on to say, it is undisputed that the city interpreted the outcome of the November 8th, 2000 vote to mean that the UDC passed. As a result, the UDC is not effective. Charter 7801 governs the procedures before the 1989 can be amended or replaced. This court finds that no genuine issue remains with regard to the fact that the UDC was not properly enacted. So we have a code that is riddled full of 173-2000, which is an amendment to the UDC. Still in our code, still not voted by the people. I think I've been very patient
1 minute.
with all of my concerns, my court trials. But now I'm going to tell you that it's time that this charter and this amendment, or the charters and the amendments and the zoning code all be respected, because you have sworn to uphold this, not amend it without our right, or not to ignore it. It's very, very dangerous for a city not to have a zoning code. Unless you have all friendly developers, someone's going to challenge you. And if the developers don't challenge you, then I guess it's up to us. Thank you.
Next, we have Rob Felber and Seth Roden.
Good evening, Mayor Yates, President Steele, and the Twinsburg City Council. My name is Rob Felber, and I reside at 1749 Mortis Drive, and I'm the president of the Twinsburg School Board. Thank you for allowing Mr. Roden and me to come before you this evening to ask for your support for the Twinsburg City School District's $4 million renewal levy, which will be on the May 7th ballot. As a renewal levy, our residents will not see an increase in real estate taxes. The reason the Twinsburg Board of Education determined the need for the $4 million renewal levy is to maintain the current educational opportunities and programs for our students. Simply put, families send their children to school each and every day with the expectation that they receive high-quality academic programming, support services, and opportunities that will allow each student to achieve at his or her highest level and be prepared for their future. The renewal levy is a significant piece of the Twinsburg schools funding model. If the renewal levy did not pass, the loss of revenue will significantly impact the district's ability to provide the services our students need and our community expects. I am very proud of all the programs and opportunities our school district provides our students, and would like to name just a few. Last year we launched our Academy at Twinsburg High School, which is the district's workforce development initiative. Thanks to the partnership we've developed between the Twinsburg Chamber of Commerce and more than 80 businesses to date, the district students are now provided significant opportunities to learn about career options through coursework, seminars, site visits, and internships. I believe that the Academy at Twinsburg High School is a model in the state of Ohio. This year, our district launched an expansion of our preschool programming with kindergarten preparatory program. The kindergarten preparatory program, along with our integrated preschool program at Wilcox School, provides the very best in early learning for our very youngest Tigers. Our integrated preschool program and our kindergarten preparatory program are rated 5-star programs by the Ohio Department of Education, making our program among the best in Ohio. The Twinsburg City School District seeks the renewal of $4 million levy this May so we can continue to provide these uniquely Twinsburg learning opportunities for our Tigers. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your considered support and continued support of our school district.
And I'm Seth Roden, 2227 Meadowwood Boulevard. I'm the representative for the Blue Ribbon Committee, and we're asking for a resolution. Thank you, I forgot the word already. A resolution from you guys in terms of your support for it, so we do appreciate that, and it's weird to be on this side. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Next, we have Lauren Senstock.
Lauren Singstock, 2704 Arbor Glen Drive, Twinsburg, Ohio. Again, I'm coming before council tonight as a citizen auditor, a concerned taxpayer in this community. And I came tonight to see the Finance Committee meeting, sat through the caucus, and I see that the city is going to again this year, the 4th year in a row, accept the mayor's budget of $51.7 million. And that is a deficit spending budget. It is not balanced by over 2.87 million, almost $2.8 million. And I was looking through the Twinsburg Bulletin and trying to look at the articles and do a little fact checking for the citizens out there who don't have any kind of life like I do, where they sit and like to look at numbers. But I did, and I see where there's some information in there that's misleading. When you make statements like Mr. Furey did of trimming $1.32 million, when you reduce the revenues by debt, of not selling debt by $1.25 million, you're really not trimming expenses out of the budget. You can push numbers on a calculator and make them do whatever you want. I know how those government calculators work. It's like 2 + 2 is whatever you want it to be. But in reality, the city's general fund is heading into a fiscal crisis. And the city is headed into a fiscal crisis. And as a council, you just can't keep approving deficit budgets year after year. We all, as taxpayers, have to balance our budgets. You need to learn to do the same thing with yours. You cannot just keep spending and spending unless you want to end up like, the East Cleveland and Maple Heights of this world and have the state come in here and tell you what you're going to do. It said in the paper that we're going to have $13.2 million in reserves at the end of the year. That's incorrect. It is correct that there's $8.2 million at the end of 2018 in the general fund. And as you all should be aware, those with tenure in council, some may not, but the city's general fund, as your finance director will, I'm sure, confirm for you, is the only fund that this city has that you can save any other funds with, like the golf course, like the fitness center. They rely on those subsidies. Not uncommon, but definitely out of line for a city this size. In looking down through here, I noticed that the numbers reported by the reporter over here, he actually took the budget and added them up with a traditional citizen taxpayer calculator, and they're correct, but they're alarming. The city is spending in total general government out of the general fund $10.8 million. You're spending $5.6 million in public works, and in the police and fire department approximately $4 million each. I've never seen a budget this far out of whack in all my years in government service and finance, selling the accounting systems. What in reality is overstated by probably at least $3 million in the general fund. The average for every community, every of the 13 municipalities here in Summit County, is around 13.5% of your total governmental expenditures. And it's usually police and fire, public safety is the largest expenditure, not the smallest. So you really have done a disservice by trying to paint this as a good budget and having really been scrutinized, when in effect this city desperately needs to start from scratch with a budget and do a zero-based budget.
1 minute.
And to do what you're doing here is going to put your city at about $4.9 million in the general fund come the end of the year. And those are all assumptions based upon the revenue estimates of the finance director, which I believe are pretty accurate. The finance director is not the person to be looking at as the person who's responsible for this. The mayor is the person who's responsible for these budgets and for this deficit spending. And this council should be being a check and balance on him to say, you go back and balance this budget. And that's his responsibility to do, not just keep spending millions of dollars this city does not have. And there's all kinds of numbers I can throw at people but the biggest ones are in your audited financial reports. The mayor was telling us from 2013 to 2018 of all the major capital improvements, but maintenance of capital items is not capital improvements, Mayor, they're just maintenance. When you look at your financial reports, in 2013, this city had an unrestricted net position, which is after all assets and liabilities added up of around $30 million. And as of the end of 2017, in your audit, you're at a deficit $5.4 million. That means $35 million have been spent in that same time frame, leaving this city basically headed to fiscal emergency. So if you want to see that happen, you've been alerted more than enough times that it's going to happen. And for 6 years, I don't want to hear the mayor tell me again, I said, oh, you had too much money. You did back in 2013 and 14, but you took real short order of getting rid of all that cash. And now you're going to find out what it is to run a city of this size and magnitude without money, and it's no fun, and you're not going to like it. But you people are the people who should be checking to make sure that that mayor is not overspending, and you're just letting it happen. So you face your citizens when you start having to face those problems. And of course, you'll just ask for more taxes. But if you don't get them, you put the city in a very, very bad financial position. Thank you.
Next, we have Sheila Williams.
Hello, everyone. Sheila Williams. I have a couple of city business things I want to address first. The Rising Star is a new program that Kent State is doing. Did you get the invitation about that?
I did.
Okay. And I would extend this invitation to the council members and the community members. It's a targeted program for at-risk kids. They start in the middle school, I think it is, and if they participate in this Rising Star program, they have an opportunity to attend Kent State free. It's economically based, first-generation college students. There are a lot of criteria there, but I would encourage all of the council members to be aware of it. I will send the information to Shannon. We're going to have a little reception in April, and if any of you would like to RSVP and come, I'm sure they would be happy to have you, where you can talk about people in your ward. I tell people all the time, if we don't invest in these students in this community, we're not going to keep them. They're not going to go to school, and they're not going to be homeowners to pay our property taxes. So we do need them. And I would encourage everyone to kind of look at this Rising Star to make a donation just to that, not necessarily to Kent State in the bigger picture, but targeted at this Rising Star program. In the rural communities, it's been very, very successful. It's like a rural upward bound program, for lack of a better word. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. The State of the Health Department is going to be in April. We talked the other day about it. They've changed it around. They're going to have some new data. I'm going to, again, send that information to Shannon. I would love to see the council there to hear what we are doing. They are just doing fabulous things at Summit County Public Health. And I realize that sometimes you can't take off from work, but a couple of hours of your time would be very informative for you to know where the money that we give them is going and what they're doing. So again, I'll make sure that Shannon gets that. I went to the Ethan's Green meeting with Mr. Furey, Mr. Barr, and a couple of things concerned me that relates to the city along with the development. It's a PD community, we know that, but there were people in the audience that expressed concerns about things that were going on in a PD community. And for people that don't know what that is, that's a planned development. And Ethan's was the first high-end development that was built here in the city of Twinsburg. I can remember sitting at Dodge, and I was a township resident, but being involved with the school district, we were all trying to sell it to change our community. And it has changed the landscape of this community. There is an undercurrent that many residents express, and I'm here as a resident of advocacy, that the city is not addressing with garbage in the yard, garbage cans, Furey looked down. He knows what I'm talking about with the couple of people that were talking about it. So I would encourage us to pick up our pace of walk-arounds or whatever we do, however we do it. I can visualize when the man was talking about the trampoline turned over. I knew exactly where he was talking about. I saw Scott shaking his head. He knew exactly. And these things impact property value. And I tell people I'm only concerned about 3 things in the city of Twinsburg: safety, school district, and my property value. Those 3 things are paramount that most homeowners are concerned about. So as an advocacy in all different walks around this city, I'm saying to you, Mayor Yates, and I'm saying to council, we need to address how we're going to deal with the things that we see slowly happening in our community. Because little things become medium-sized, and then they become big, and then they become out of control. And I'm going to say that. If nobody else says it, I'm going to say it out loud. And there's a subculture here in Twinsburg, like it is in every community. And I don't care how much money you make a year, the subculture mentality is still there. And I don't want that here for us. We're better than that. And I hope that we can address this problem as the weather is starting to change and the snow is melting and you're looking at people's yards. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to talk about 91. It is such a thorn to me, but I'm going to survive it. I didn't bring my sign tonight saying help me, but I am going to say I want to walk around when the weather gets reasonable to walk back there. I see all the workers walking, but I'd like my representative from my ward to walk with me. I'd like the mayor to walk with me. I'd like Amy to walk with me, because I need several things identified. I need to know what the city owns. I just left Cobblestone meeting tonight, and we were talking about it. I need to know what we're responsible for. They have torn up, ODOT came back there and dug in, and they tore up that back area. The money they paid us for our land was not for the tear up they did. I want to know what we're going to do for them to replace that. It looks hideous back there, and we're not even into warm weather. So I am formally asking for somebody to please reach out to me and humor me and walk with me about it. I'm going to talk about rental properties. There was a couple that lived, and I won't say the street, Mr. Furey, that we all talked to at this meeting on Monday. There was fear in their eyes. They're older. They were very concerned. I'm assuming their neighbors are young. And several things that they talked about was parking ban, noise, not being able to pull out of their driveway. Please, gentlemen, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, because they were speaking it out in public. And not sure who to do, who to call, and what to get done. That they had called the police department, nothing had been done. And I talked to them afterwards, and I know you did too, Mr. Furey. And one thing I said to them was, it was a rental policy. And I'm going to go back to what I keep saying. We need to have some type of rental policy in this city. Nothing to do with the sober house, nothing to do with any of those things. We need to have something in writing for everyone in this community. They spoke with just enough fear, and that has bothered me since that meeting. And I said I was going to say something tonight about that. That's all I have to say. I love this community, and you all know that. And as I move around and look at other governments and sit in on meetings, my son is here from California, and a couple of you all know him. He's meeting with several government officials. And he says, I wish Twinsburg could do something for me. I wish I could do something out here in Twinsburg. And he's looking at empowerment zone monies and things that are rebuilding communities. And I said, we don't have those issues. We're trying to move forward, but we don't have the types of monies that he's looking at. And that's because we do work hard at it. And I do appreciate you all, even though at times I may get a little pissed off at you, like 91. But thank you. And I have a roundabout for you. I almost forgot it. That's what I came to give you. AAA had a thing that says almost everything you need to know about roundabouts. Maybe Gary can put it on our website. I'm going to give it to Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That is all.
Okay, next is council communication and committee reports. Mr. Bellan.
Good evening. On Tuesday, March 5th, I attended the ribbon cutting at the Twinsburg Fitness Center in the Kent State Training Zone. It also happened to fall on the 20th anniversary of the fitness center, which was really kind of cool. Monday, March 11th, I attended the department head retreat where myself and fellow council members met with the mayor and the department heads to talk about their operations. That night, we met with law, finance, and HR. I also attended this evening's finance committee meeting. I'll allow one of my colleagues to report on that. The ARB met on Thursday, March 7th. There were 6 cases on the agenda. Case 190315 was the home demolition of a home at 9422 Darrow Road. It was approved unanimously. Case 190316 was a review of the sign program at 9810 Ravenna Road. It was tabled for further discussion. The associated cases with that case, 1903, 17, 18, 19, and 20 were also subsequently tabled. The next ARB meeting will be held on Thursday, March 21st, 6 p.m. right here in council chambers. The Golf Advisory Board meeting that was originally scheduled for March 19th has been canceled. The next Golf Advisory Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 21st, 6:30 p.m. right here in council chambers. Nothing further this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Scaffide.
Thank you and good evening. I have a really short report tonight. The Board of Zoning Appeals has not met since our last meeting, and they had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening, which has been canceled. So there is no Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. I'm not sure when the next one is scheduled for, but I will make that announcement at the next meeting. I did attend all Finance Committee meetings as well as the other 2 meetings that Mr. Bellan mentioned as well, the ribbon cutting and the meeting we had last night with the council and the mayor and a few of the department heads. So other than that, that's really all I have tonight, and that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Mr. Furey.
Thank you. I attended the fitness celebration for the 20th anniversary, as well as the council retreat last night for law, finance, and human resources. This evening we had a finance committee meeting. We had a lot of finance committee meetings lately. We've looked at every line item in the budget, and the finance committee unanimously recommended that this be brought forward to council. There's a gentleman that made some comments earlier this evening. I got the 13.182821.92 number from our January statement of cash from where we're going to close. I'm fully aware that these accounts, other than the general fund, are not fluid in between each other. My point was that we have other sources of revenue other than income tax, only income tax. We get revenue to run the city from multiple sources. The next Finance Committee meeting will be on the 23rd of April at 6:30. Next Tuesday at 5 p.m. will be a Tax Incentive Review Board meeting, which is an annual event, at which time all the top agreements, which are Twinsburg occupancy programs, where businesses have to live up to their commitment on growing employment. In return, they get a discount on their income tax for those new employees. Now, we review that to make sure that they're in compliance, so if they're to either continue the agreement or modify it. We also review all the CRA agreements, which are community redevelopment agreements, where if you build new property or add on to an existing building, there might be an opportunity to get a discount on the property tax for a period of time to encourage that investment. Again, every one of these agreements is reviewed by the county, the city, the school system as well is involved with this because the community reinvestment income tax, they have to agree to those as it affects property tax, and we reimburse them as well. So that's next Tuesday at 5 p.m. The CIC will meet April 11th at 6 p.m. The CIC is another arm of the economic development for progress in the city. We just launched a new website, twinsburgcic.com. Please take a look at it. It's been
under construction and is very interactive. And finally, I'd like to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day this Saturday and Sunday and Monday, maybe, I don't know. So, thank you very much.
Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Good evening. Since we last met here, I had the privilege of attending the Environmental Commission meeting. It met on Tuesday, March 5th, here in council chambers. Some of the items that we discussed, Ms. Walker is still working on her crusade to eliminate plastic and thin film plastics from our local grocery stores, and we appreciate her efforts thus far. We are working on our community cleanup dates, specifically the fall cleanup date. We're actually waiting to hear on a few things from the schools as far as homecoming weekend, because we do like to allow high school students to get some service hours for that event. The church group has reached out to the Environmental Commission, and we're toying with the idea of doing a spring cleanup if we can get our dates and schedules together. Right now it's looking like early April. I don't want to, we haven't nailed down a date yet, but we do have a meeting next week, so hopefully as I hear a little more, I'll keep you informed. So we are looking to get out there and do some cleanup this spring in the neighborhoods there. I'd like to recognize Zen Denker, who is our student member, or student ambassador on the Environmental Commission, for the 5 recycling bins that she picked up and has already delivered to the high school cafeteria. So I think it's great. We have, she's an amazing young woman, and I mean, already directly impacting, you know, what she has immediate control of, and that's just trying to get more of her peers to recycle at the high school. So that's a tremendous accomplishment. Community Shredding Day, I know I've said this before, it's a ways out, but get your boxes and bags together September 14th. That'll be at Public Works, and it's a Saturday. Earth Day celebration, April 28th. We are finalizing a few items for that. It'll be at Liberty Park. Promises to be a terrific event. I can speak to more of the activities and things in our first meeting here in April. The next meeting of the Environmental Commission will be here in council chambers on Tuesday, April 2nd at 7 o'clock. I was unable to attend the Planning Commission meeting last week. Mr. Steele attended in my absence, and I appreciate that. I'll let him report on that, but I would like to point out the next Planning Commission meeting will be here on this coming Monday. Yes, this coming Monday. Sorry, I wrote down April 1st. That would be the meeting after the next meeting. So this coming Monday here at 7 o'clock in council chambers. It was terrific to attend the Kent State Fitness Center Synergy area grand opening with the new turf. And that's going to allow, it's a great partnership with Kent State and allow those regional students to be able to use the fitness center. I was unaware that students that attended the regional facility here in Twinsburg do not have access to the fitness center at the main campus, I believe. So this is a great opportunity for them to use our facility and to partner up with us on that. Mr. Furey hit on CIC, Finance Committee. We've certainly been inundated with those meetings recently here. And just a quick shout out to Service Public Works for their prompt response to a downed light pole on Merrick Lane from the windstorms we had a few weeks ago. As always, you guys are on top of things, so thank you for that. That is all I have this evening, Mr. Steele. Thank you.
Mrs. Stauffer.
Good evening. I also attended all the meetings they've been speaking of. My committees, however, have not met. Twins Day Committee the meeting is tomorrow, March 13th at 7 p.m. at Twins Day, or at the hall, Twins Day Hall. And then the Community Relations meeting is March 21st at 5 o'clock at the Chamber House. And that's all I have to report tonight.
Ms. McFearin.
Okay, I'll keep mine short too. I did attend all of the meetings that everyone else has talked about. Kent State, the retreat, the finance meeting tonight. Parks and Rec met on the 28th. Primarily they went over all the upcoming activities, opening the pool, day camp, and all of that. It's on the website and also on Facebook. New equipment will be arriving at the fitness center over the next couple of weeks, so look for that. the chamber building will host the community relations meeting on the 21st that Mrs. Stauffer and I will be attending. Friends of Twinsburg Parks, they're continuing their membership drive. That's a 501c organization, nonprofit, to help our parks and recreation. So if anyone is interested in that, we are going to have the monthly meeting again on March 19th, and that will be at the clubhouse at AMM. And I will be at the CIC meeting on the 11th. Our council meeting has been moved up till next week. And I guess that's all I have right now.
I was here for the finance meeting earlier tonight, which Mr. Furey reported on. I did go to the planning commission meeting for Mr. Barr. They did approve a site plan for an addition to Pathmaster, which is, my memory serves me right, on Midway Drive. And the other thing they started to discuss was the rezoning of the Glenwood and Route 91 piece of property up by the fire station. It was an interesting discussion. Two of the members brought up about possibly going with a commercial zoning up there as opposed to the R5. Mr. Finch, basically, the good thing about doing an R5, it's a set number of houses. You get a set number back of what you can work with. He did say, and I agree with him, it would be, if you went commercial, you don't really have an ability to forecast what's going to come back. Okay, I mean, you could go commercial and hit a big number, or you could go commercial and not do anything. So it'll be interesting to what comes back to us from the planning commission. Unfortunately for me, the March 5th thing up at the fitness center, I was at work, so I couldn't make that. I did get to part of the meeting last night, but once again, I had things that called me away. I had to be in a meeting for work. So with that, Mayor Yates, Ted.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just a couple of things. Tomorrow, I will be doing my State of the City for the seniors. And so I think if you missed the one before and like to hear it, you can pretend to be a senior, you can walk in there and hear the State of the City. I did go to the Blue Ribbon Pancake Breakfast and the Community Expo, which was an unbelievable event. I mean, I think I heard numbers of around 4,000 people that came through that day. So it was a huge event for both the Blue Ribbon Committee as well as the Chamber, who have attempted to do different community vendor type events around the city, and this was a really great turnout to combine those two. I did go to the KSU ribbon cutting. It was an exciting partnership that we have with Kent State. It's nice to be able to help those kids who are non-traditional students. They have no rights to work out the main campus, and to offer a place for them when they're here in Twinsburg. You know, fitness is a very large part of this community, both from youth programming up to our seniors. So it's glad that we can accommodate Kent State in that partnership. And then, I guess lastly, I want to just make a few comments regarding the budget. You know, our budget process starts, usually we start talking about it in August, September, start really getting into it in October, November. It's a very long process. No one has disregarded or sugar-coated the fact that we have deficit spent over the last number of years. When I came on as mayor, there was a budget in place for 2016. So my first budget that I worked on with department heads was 2017 and 2018. I know they'll probably look over here and say, it seems a lot more, a lot longer, because it's been some trying budget meetings, but we've worked hard at trying to decrease our expenditures. As our proclaimed citizen auditor said, that we have deficit spend. He finds a whole lot of opportunity to point that out, yet not really made any real recommendations. And the reason for that is because it's not a complicated process. We have, and I've said this a lot, but I'm going to say it again, a large part of our budget is people. People that are sitting in here, people that have families, people that work for the city, people that provide the services that we provide here at the city of Twinsburg. When we look at our general fund, and you look back to 2014, we spent about $27.7 million out of the general fund. 2018, if you take away what we invested into the golf course, we spent about $27.7 million out of the general fund. Okay, so we've spent the same amount for operations the last 5 years. And one of the things that is challenging, and I mentioned it in some of my State of the City, are really the increases that we see that are significant that we have very little control over, and that add no real benefit to our operations. I mentioned one is healthcare. We've gone from $2.1 million in our healthcare expense to 3.5, so that's 1.4 million. That is the same number of employees. Okay, is the same coverage. Actually, our coverage has gotten a little worse because of the health industry changes, but it's added a cost that we can't change of about 1.4 million. Just recently, I looked at our salaries and expenses. So again, this is a number that we've maintained cost of living increases for all our employees every year, and that's something that I'm proud of. I mean, back in 2008, 2009, when we had the 0.25% in place, I believe the whole city was on a pay freeze. So a lot of things changed in that time, and when you add in that additional $3 million worth of revenue and pay freezes, we built reserves. But when you look at our salaries and wages today compared to 2012, they're up about 3.2 million, okay? Add in another $500,000 for benefits. So now we've got $4.5, almost $5 million of increased costs, same employee base, same healthcare policy, that we've got to find a way to absorb. And we can only absorb so much in the operations of the city, okay? And we've squeezed as much as we can possibly squeeze, and that's why I think unanimously council approved this year's budget, even though it's showing a $3 million deficit. We focused for years now on the expense side without looking at the revenue side, because I thought we owed it to this community when that 0.25% went away to not just ask for it back, but just to work at doing what we can to get our budget in order. And so the recommendations to decrease this budget is easy. I mean, we have two choices. We either don't do any capital projects, so we don't fix roads, we don't do anything to improve our infrastructure, or we take a list of employees and we ask council to go cross off 30 names that we want to get rid of. That's going to impact our services. That's going to impact everything we do as a city. I'm not ready to do that yet, and I don't think council is either. And that's why we're sitting here today and we're presenting this budget to pass. So, for me, it's been challenging. I mean, we ate up significant reserves in 2000. We started in 2014, and in 2015, the first year, we ate up more reserves. 2016, again, was a budget I did not present, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about Kathy or what went on at that time, because we were sitting on significant reserves still. We were still sitting on $20 million of reserves. So, but again, we had significant capital those years too. So I guess the point of all this is that council, department heads, myself, have worked hard to try to slow down the amount of reserves, and that's happened. Every year we spent less and less of reserves, okay? We're working hard to do that. We understand, we all understand. Nobody needs to sit at a podium and say, your deficit spending. I think everyone on council and myself is aware of that. I've been talking every opportunity I have, and I've been mentioning that, okay? I don't hide it, okay? It's a topic that has been the forefront of every speech, every state of the city that I've given. Even the first one I gave, which I'd only been on 3 months, I sat up there and I talked about eating up reserves and that something's got to change. So as we move forward, I think, you know, we do have some decisions to make. And again, I think as a community we have some decisions to make. So I'm glad and I'm proud of the work that's been done by council. I think they've dug in deeper than they've ever dug in the last number of years. We're going to continue to work hard to get us balanced, you know, but it's got to be probably on both sides of the fence. So we'll continue to look at that, and we'll continue to work at it. So I guess that's all I'm going to say at this point. So I apologize for rambling on, but this is a topic that council and myself have talked about for a number of years. This is just isn't happening this year, okay? So as we move forward in 2019, you know, we'll continue, as Mr. Furey said, we put a budget in place, but if there's anything we can do to decrease that budget, which we've done throughout the years, there's different projects we've cut out, there's different things that we've done to help minimize the spending. Because at the end of the day, a budget is just a budget. You're going to look at your revenue and you're going to look at your expenses, okay? And what is left in reserves, and that's what we look at. So with that, we'll move on to department head reports. I guess Russ is going to go first.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just wake up. All right. Construction activity for the month of February. My office received 47 applications for plan review with a construction cost of $623,000. And my field staff performed 120 inspections for the month of February. We had 13 point of sale applications submitted for title transfer request. Update on the double pole situation. Windstream has begun removal of the abandoned poles. Process, from my understanding, they are going to cut it down to grade, leave the rest in the ground. We are going to follow that. We have our spreadsheet in my office, so we are going to be following with as they go proceed through. Right now, they're in the Glenwood Acres subdivision, so we'll be monitoring the removal process. And lastly, I would like to say that my department, we're going to try to implement some electronic plan review process for certain applications, really small ones like roofing, siding, concrete, window replacements. So it's a process we like to expedite those. They seem to be very more in majority now with new older homes trying to rehab their own houses, so we're trying to expedite a process, trying to cut out the middle process, stopping in. So we're experimenting with that right now with our electronic plan review with that. And that's all I have for tonight.
Russ, could you explain what that is? I'm sorry. What you were just speaking about?
Electronic plan review?
Right.
Well, we've created, let's say with a roof.
Okay.
There are certain things we're going to expect them to the code. So we create an application, they have to check off everything they're going to do.
Okay.
So there's really no drawing submitted. So they submit this, we look at, they get a copy of that back, get their permit, and so we go on the site, this is what we're checking off they did. So it's a simple process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Russ, I have a question. I understand you mentioned about the double poles. I understand. I'm very happy. I heard this week that they started in Glenwood Acres, and they've been working about 2 weeks, and they're removing poles. You said they're just going to cut them to grade. When are they going to remove then? Or they're just going to leave them at that point, just cut them to grade?
They're leaving part in the ground.
They're going to leave part in the ground?
Yes.
But it'll be to grade where you can put soil and seed on top of it? And not
Well, it won't be a hazard to walk over, be able to maintain it, from my understanding, yes.
Okay, so do you know how, are we almost done with Glenwood Acres then?
We don't have we don't have the information just yet. Dennis is going to be following up on that.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yes.
Is there an update on those donation boxes, and also on, I think at one point that some of the building inspectors were going out and that they saw some things that maybe residents needed to address at their homes, that program?
Well, the donation boxes, I got 2 applications, just kind of waiting for the weather to get clear. The owner's trying to get them removed off-site. They're not going to have them there anymore. Some have been removed. So of the 7 or 8 that are privately owned. We'll say 2 have gotten an application to get screening around them. The rest are being removed.
Got it.
And then you questioned the other item after?
Yeah, the one where the building department's going out if some residents may need to pay some attention to maintenance items on their house.
Property maintenance.
The property maintenance.
A few years ago, well, about 7 or 8 years, I started a program called Neighborhood Preservation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generally going up and down the sidewalk in the public right-of-way and kind of do a gradual checklist on things like, I think some residents will be happy to see. We can see from just from the right-of-way, and we'll cite them on that.
No, I know, but you started doing it, or you had door knockers or
We're going to wait
something?
probably next month to get a program started up again like that. We'll hit certain different areas of different wards.
Would you be kind enough to stop by Ethan's Green and take a look at some of the areas that Sheila...
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Sheila is the ear of the pulse of Ethan's Green, if you will, sir.
The challenge with that is, as we talked about at the homeowners association, is your stuff is your stuff.
I understand.
And some of your stuff's allowed to be out there, even though it's unpleasant to others. You know, with specific attention about trampolines, and you know, if you're 70 or 60, you don't like trampolines unless they're your grandkids. You got one next to me, and the 10-year-olds are having a blast. So
I'm not the building commissioner. I'm just saying if you see violations, sir, please feel free to enforce them.
To follow Mr. Barr's lead and go and see if you see anything. But that some of the concerns were probably not violations of our code.
Oh, I agree. I'm not the fun police, by
I
no
can't-
means. I'm not trying to get rid of trampolines. Just
That wouldn't be the proper
The comment was
maintenance code.
meant,
How's
instead
that?
of having people have it in the side yard and upside down, maybe they could put them where they're not as, visible. So again, that's more of a homeowners association issue
Well, if
possibly.
it's
But
kind of like destroying and damage, yeah, we'll have to tell them to get off the property, but yeah. But if it's
we would
operable-
always appreciate your service.
Thank you.
I'd like to know,
Thank
as you
you.
navigate through the city, what areas that you're in, so if whoever's going to do that could shoot an email out to us, I'd appreciate that.
We'll know which ward we're attacking first.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not
That's it.
attacking, yeah.
I think visiting
Strike
might be a
that.
little less so. Russ, you know the house that is in my ward that we get calls on from the neighbors all the time with cats and lawnmower.
Dollar General card too?
But there's not a whole lot we can do with the stuff that's in the driveway, is it not?
We are very limited. I speak to the sister regularly,
Right.
and there's not much.
Well, I'm just saying, you guys are talking about things that's out in the yard. This house has a big lawnmower out there. I thought there was, I think the last time I heard, there was a fridge and there was stuff in the driveway, and there's no cars that go in and out, but we're kind of limited in what we can do with it. So, I mean, it's not bad to get them to come out and take a look, but don't expect the miracle right away that everything gets taken care of, guys. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Chief.
For the month of February, we had 220 calls for service. That brings us up to 470 for the year. That's about almost 30 calls short of where we were at the same point last year. We also completed 19 inspections and had one fire investigation through the course of the month. And 14 hours of public education, totaling about 180 personal contacts. And we also completed about 104 training events, totaling almost 400 hours of training. Under points of interest, the weather warning sirens were tested on the 2nd of the month, and they all worked properly. No exceptions.
All right.
We are also anticipating taking part in this Ohio statewide tornado siren test, which will be on March 20th at 9:50 in the morning.
March 20th.
And we wanted to highlight a couple of personnel changes. Of course, you were all witness to one, in that we hired our part-timer Ryan Nutter as a full-time member on February 9th, and also on February 15th, Mike Lang, a member of the department since '97, retired on a disability retirement. And we're just appreciate his service for all these years. We are seeing if we can re-engage him as a part-time inspector in the future, but we're still working out those details. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And we did schedule the civil service test, correct, Chief?
That's correct.
For April 29th? 27th? Okay. All right, Lieutenant?
Good evening, Mayor and Council, residents. My name is Lieutenant Thomas Mason. I'm giving the February police report on behalf of Chief Noga, who couldn't be here. During the month of February, the City of Twinsburg Communications Center generated 2,361 calls for service among the Twinsburg Police and Fire Departments and the Reminderville Police and Fire Departments. Twinsburg police officers arrested and/or cited 142 suspects in the court on 226 different counts. Twinsburg officers issued 239 written warnings and 9 parking citations, and the officers investigated 32 traffic crashes, of which 6 were injury crashes, 7 were on private property, and none were fatal. Just on a later note, some departmental personnel information for you guys. As some of you may, most people probably don't know, Sergeant Krieger is going to be retiring. His last official day, I believe, is April 27th, right around there. He's got about 2.5, 3 more weeks where he'll actually be in the department. And along those lines, Detective Brian Donato is being promoted to sergeant. So we're very excited about that.
Great.
That's my report.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Lieutenant?
Yes, sir.
Could you have the patrols take a look at any parked cars on the White Ash Trail for me, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
White Ash.
It's a narrower street, and there seems to be a lot of concern of that from our meeting last week.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
Good evening, Council. I want to say thanks for spending all the time with the budget. I know it was a big project, and I appreciate the time you spent with finance week after week and multiple times a week sometimes. Interest earnings through February are at $41,000. This is an increase of 16% over last year at this time, where we were about 35, so we're still doing good work on our interest earnings. And then finance, we did some pension training this week. OPERS and OP&F both have nice programs where they'll send somebody up for free when you have a new payroll person, so we're kind of taking advantage of that, and the whole finance department is spending time with those folks to learn as much as we can while we have the opportunity. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have for tonight.
Okay. Moving on to legislation. First is ordinance 05-2019.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Village of Reminderville to provide certain police and fire dispatching services.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 05-2019 as our second.
Second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Any discussion from anybody?
I have some, please.
Go ahead, Bill.
I would like to make a motion that we amend Section 5 in the contract by removing the first sentence is fine. The agreement shall be in effect for the period of 3 years, commencing June 1st, 2019, and expiring on May 31st, 2022. The next sentence reads, the agreement shall automatically renew for a term of 1 additional year unless either party notifies the other at least 90 days prior to the date of the expiration, and then current term excerpts as otherwise provided in paragraph 9. I would like to remove that sentence so that there is no automatic renewal clause in this, as I spoke earlier this evening in the caucus. Is there a second to my motion?
I'll second it. I second it.
Did you make contact with the Reminderville mayor?
I made contact, but I have not heard back.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I mean, we'll just modify the contract and send it to them for a signature. You know, its effective date is June, so we have time.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the amendment.
Now I need to
Now you're going to
do the ordinance.
As amended.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 05-2019 as amended.
I'll second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Any discussion? Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
No.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 05-2019 passes 6-1. Next is ordinance 07-2019.
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a purchase agreement to acquire property participating in the FEMA funding program in the Tinkers Creek floodplain.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 07-2019. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Scaffide seconds. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I do. I would just like to say, this is another one of the properties on East Idlewood that we received monies from FEMA, and I believe we've already removed 2 houses there, 1 house so far. Okay, this will be the second one that we'll be purchasing with that money, and then we're removing that house and taking that out of the floodplain. So I'm glad we've been able to offer this program the last few years. I think we are taking a break from that next year, or this year and next year. So, but I'm glad we're able to do that this year as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this particular, we've targeted houses that are impacted by the floodplain, but also adjacent to our current parkland that we own. So it's kind of serving 2 purposes: helping those residents who, based on history, could have a problem in the future, and then also adding to our parkland along that corridor.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, the total purchase cost is $123,000. The city's portion is $30.7 thousand.
Anything else? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 07-2019 passes 7-0. Next is ordinance 09-2019.
An ordinance accepting the bid of Barbekas Construction Company Incorporated for the 2019 road improvement project.
Okay. Amy, you want this to be an emergency, correct? So we can get this on the schedule. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 09-2019 an emergency and place it on its 3rd and final reading. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Stauffer.
Mrs. Stauffer seconds. Is there any discussion?
She wanted it on emergency
Yeah.
so they could get started.
So we can get started. Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Wait, we're going to see if we need to amend it first.
Yeah, we have to amend it to add the
We'll
emergency.
make a motion that we add the standard emergency clause.
Okay. I second.
Okay, thank you. And on the amendment, Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay. Adding the emergency clause passes 7-0. Now, I'd like to make the motion to declare ordinance 09-2019 emergency and place it on its 3rd and final reading.
I'll second.
Okay, Maureen seconds. Any discussion?
We need an emergency so we can get started.
Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Okay. The emergency passes 7-0. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 09-2019. Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 09-2019 passes 7-0.
As an emergency. As an emergency.
As an emergency, okay.
I know.
Next in order is ordinance 13-2019.
An ordinance accepting the lands and improvements dedicated to public use for Quarry Reserve at Boulder Brook subdivision, accepting the maintenance bond, and reducing the performance guarantee accordingly.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 13-2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. McFerrin seconds. Any discussion? Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 13-2019 passes 7-0. Next is ordinance 18-2019.
The permanent appropriation ordinance for 2019, approved by council from estimates submitted by the mayor, providing for the ordinary expenses and other necessary expenses of the city of Twinsburg, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
That's its first reading. Next is ordinance 20-2019.
That was the second reading.
Okay, second reading, I'm sorry. That's the second reading. Next one is ordinance 20-2019.
19. Ordinance 19.
19. Okay, 19. 2019.
An ordinance accepting the proposal of Waste Management Incorporated, 6705 Richmond Road, Glenwillow, Ohio, 44139, for the refuse and recycling collection and disposal.
Next is 20-2019.
An ordinance authorizing the sale at auction of certain personal property owned by the city of Twinsburg and no longer needed for municipal purposes.
Next is ordinance 21-2019.
An ordinance accepting the bid of J.D. Striping and Services Incorporated for the 2019 road striping contract and declaring an emergency.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 21-2019 an emergency and place it on its third and final reading. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Barr seconds. The reason is we need to get this scheduled so we can get the lines back on our roads. Is there any other discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Okay, the emergency passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 21-2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Bellan seconds. Any more discussion?
The total of the striping contract is $62,734.
Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 21-2019 passes 7-0. Okay, next is resolution 22-2019.
A resolution appointing 3 members to the Board of Building and Zoning Code Appeals.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 22-2019. Yeah, I got them on a sheet there, baby.
Shannon, you got the names? Shannon.
There's a blue sheet of paper.
There it is.
Do you want the names, or?
Can I have that back, please?
Is there a second on the motion for discussion? Thank you.
Mr. Furey seconds the motion. Is there any discussion?
Could you read the names?
The names we're going to put.
This is the
Yeah.
Board of Zoning Appeals, BZA.
BZA. That would be, the names will be Tom Brown, Chris Griffith, and Seth Roden. Is there any other discussion?
We had a lot of people interview for these positions, and we did our best to pick the best people for these slots. So if anybody is not being reappointed or appointed to a board, we encourage you to reapply next year, as well as there's a citizen group called Friends of the Twinsburg Parks. It's meeting monthly. It's a volunteer group that is looking for members. So if you want to get involved with the city, that would be another way that you could do that. And they have a website on, as well as a Facebook page. Friends
of Twinsburg Parks. And also, you could always come to meetings and share ideas at any of the boards and commissions.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 22, 2019 passes 7-0. Next is Resolution 23, 2019.
A resolution appointing 5 members to the Capital Improvement Board.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 23, 2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Scaffide seconds. Okay, the names for the Capital Improvements Board will be Angelo Carciapola, Brian Waldorf, Sharon Price, Eric Horniak, and Charles King. Is there any other discussion? Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 23, 2019 passes 7-0. Okay. The next two, Resolution 24, 2019 and Resolution 25, 2019, we're going to pass by tonight. We have to amend the ordinances for those so we can put the people on the commissions. Next one is Resolution 26, 2019.
A resolution appointing 3 members to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 26, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Joanne?
Ms. McFerrin seconds. Is there any discussion? The names that we are adding to it are, putting on that are Deb Peltz, Paul Donahue, and John Blust. Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes 7-0. Okay. Next is Resolution 27, 2019.
A resolution appointing 2 members to the Planning Commission.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 27, 2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barr seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, the 2 names that we are going to appoint to the Planning Commission are Mr. Joe Zietz and Mr. Pete Metropolis. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Okay, that resolution 27, 2019 passes 7-0. Next, we are on to ordinance 28, 2019.
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into an agreement with B&C Communications, K&R Communications, and Tri-County Tower LLC for the purchase and installation of a microwave network between the Communications Center and the Summit County Radio Tower and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 28, 2019 an emergency and place it on its third and final reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Is there any discussion?
The reason for the emergency is they want to replace T1 lines with a microwave tower, and police and fire want it as soon as possible, so this will allow us to begin it immediately.
Yeah, because the T1 lines are not as reliable as they should be. We need to get that microwave.
Okay.
That's what they said. Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Okay, the emergency passes 7-0. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 28, 2019. Is there a second?
As an emergency.
As an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Any more discussion?
Cost of the microwave network is $70,000. It was originally budgeted for $270,000. So I appreciate Chief Noga's work in getting the price down.
And there's three separate, I know there was a question earlier, there's three separate vendors just because there's specific functions that each of them play in making sure this project is taken care of completely.
Okay. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Ms. McFearin?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the list is Resolution 29, 2019.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Board of Education of the Twinsburg City School District pursuant to Chapter 755 of the Ohio Revised Code prescribing the leasing of school buses to the City of Twinsburg for the 2019 City Recreation Program.
Okay, that's his first reading. Next is unfinished business, new business.
That's a resolution.
Oh, resolution, I'm sorry. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 29, 2019. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Furey seconds. Is there any discussion?
The purpose of this is to contract buses for the summer programs with the school system.
Okay, Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Furey?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scaffide?
Yes.
Mr. Bellan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stauffer?
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes 7-0. Now we're on to unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. Anything?
I just wanted to wish everybody a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day this weekend.
I have nothing, thank you.
Bill?
Nothing this evening other than to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day again. Thank you.
Joanne?
Being a McFearin, I wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day.
You know what, I would like to say something. I'd like to thank the mayor and Sarah. I know you guys worked really hard for this budget, and it's not easy. There's a lot of information going around that isn't true. I'd like to encourage the residents to please call Sarah, call the mayor. You'll get all the information you need. So I just would like to encourage people to really do your homework before you believe what's on social media. And have a nice Thanksgiving, or happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm feeling so thankful. Okay.
Just one thing for me, I did have the opportunity to attend the Blue Ribbon Breakfast in the Chamber Business get-together last weekend. It was terrific. I can't say enough about how wonderful our schools have been for not only my kids, but their peers as well. My wife attended the Dodge Mother's Son Dance. I believe Mrs. Bellan was there with one of Greg's brood, two of Greg's. And I appreciate the time that Mr. Roden and Mr. Felber took this evening to come and talk about the renewal. Personally, I think this is important for us to continue to kind of maintain and keep up the status quo. And I guess I could maybe ask Mr. Maestros if that would possibly be a resolution you could prepare for our next council meeting for consideration by council.
Certainly, I can have it ready for next Tuesday.
I appreciate that.
Mayor?
Nothing else from me this evening. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, be safe
How
out there.
about
We'll have our
Thanksgiving?
officers out throwing dishes and stuff.
Everybody have a safe and happy St. Patty's Day. Okay.
And we have a St. Patrick's Day brunch at A&M.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for something to do on Sunday between 10 and 2, there's a special menu. That's it.
Okay. We're all here, so we don't have to excuse anybody. So at this time, we're adjourned.
All right.
Actually, that looks really good.
Get it.
Yes.